Hi everyone, I'm Michael.
And I'm Patrick, and you're watching an episode of Star Wars News and Views. Today we'll be reviewing The Force Awakens. Full spoilers ahead on this one. This is our full...
All the spoilers that are in the movie will be revealed, so please, for the love of God, if you have not watched the movie, watch this when you get back from seeing the movie, and then we can have a discussion about it.
We have another video with us just reactions, but this is like the full, everything, enchilada and all that jazz. Okay, so I'm going to start off a little bit and say that I thought the movie was very good. There are certain criticisms that I might have, but overall they're minor and they don't detract at all from what I thought was a great movie.
Well, it's like the original Star Wars has problems, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's no such thing as a perfect movie.
It doesn't stop it from being one of my favorite movies ever, right?
It's like it works in spite of the flaws. Right?
Yeah.
So
overall, I thought music was great. It wasn't standing out too much, but it was good. I liked it a lot.
To be honest, I wasn't impressed with the music. I remember Snoke's theme.
I remember Kylo Ren's one, which I liked.
Snoke's theme was really creepy, like the Emperor, but and there was the X-wing theme.
Yeah, that was
really good. But actually, I was kind of underwhelmed by the music, but that's fine. It wasn't a problem.
I think I might actually have a sit down and listen to it on YouTube or whatever as a full album, just to kind of see if there's anything that I missed from it that I actually really like. Because sometimes you could not be paying attention to it at all because you're just listening to the dialogue, right?
Yeah, you're so invested in the characters and stuff.
Yeah. And on that note, I really liked the dialogue a lot in that movie. I thought one thing that was definitely stand out of this that was really gone in the prequels was that sort of witty banter that went back and forth, which was really nice.
That snappiness, and there was so many funny moments where Rey mind tricks the stormtrooper and she's and by the way, leave your gun as you go up. And actually that was Daniel Craig.
Yeah,
it's come to light.
Yeah, and it's funny because she was trying to push her luck already. She was oh, I can't believe it worked. And drop your gun.
She pushes it even more. Yeah. And then there's Kylo Ren is having his temper tantrum and tearing up the room. And there's these two stormtroopers are just going to lunch or something, and they see all this crap flying out of the room, and they just turn around and walk the other way.
Yeah. And then when Kylo Ren takes Poe Dameron up to him, and he's just holding him there, and they're just staring at him, and he's just so would I talk first or you? And it's just that witty banter. I wouldn't have seen that at all in the prequels.
No, definitely would not. Well, actually, one of my favorite moments was when Han Solo brings Finn with him to Starkiller Base, and they're gonna do this big infiltration, and he's how are we gonna blow this planet up? He's we'll just use the Force. He's that's not how the Force works. And then he's okay, so you were on the inside, so how does this work? He's well, I worked in sanitation, so he was basically the janitor,
and he defected, and he's actually helping them take down.
Yeah, so their inside Mole is just the janitor at the Death Star, basically.
Which would make sense why he knew about it, but it's still just a funny role to have someone do.
Or that's when they take Captain Phasma hostage. They're does this place have a trash compactor? He's actually there is. Because he's the only one that knows about the trash compactor. Yeah, lots of little moments like that. I was just made me so happy. It was makes you laugh, makes you smile. If you can grin more than 5 or 6 times during the movie, there was this test. I can't remember what it's called, but it's if you grin more than 6 times during a movie, it passes this test.
Oh, okay.
And that's the test of is it worth watching or not?
Yeah. That's it was something that was really we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy, which was such a great space adventure film, opera type thing where you're oh, there's always really great moments, and that was what felt really like a Star Wars movie to me, back before this one came out. That was the closest thing we had since
this sense of fun. I remember reading an interview with J.J. Abrams where he was thinking about the film when he asked himself the question, what's the one emotion that I want the audience to take away from this movie?
Yeah.
And the word he came up with was joy.
Yeah.
That was the emotion he wanted the audience to walk out with, and I think he achieved that with flying colors.
Yeah. And this, I think, leads into, especially because, if you've seen it at this point, which I hope you have because of the spoiler thing, you already know, some of the big things that happen in this movie that really can lead up to a sequel that can have really dark moments, right?
Yeah.
And who better to do that than Rian Johnson, who has directed some pretty dark films already as it is, and kind of have this, looming, sort of sense in the next one. But for the first one, he just wanted it to be a fun reimagining and re-entering into the Star Wars world,
Well, it's basically a remake of A New Hope, and I think that's the biggest criticism it has. It's okay, it starts off and the stormtroopers kick ass and they take a rebel hostage and the droid gets sent away with crucial information, and then they meet this character that's living on a desert planet, but they want to get off the desert planet, but they can't.
Yeah.
And, then they have to destroy the super weapon.
And chase scene, infiltration scene, where they go into the thing. Yeah, it's all these, like,
it essentially is a remake of A New Hope, and I think that, like, there is enough unique elements in it to make it stand out on its own, but I think that's one of the bigger criticisms. I'm being nitpicky. I really don't have criticisms.
Yeah.
But if I had to complain about anything, for me, I think it relied a little bit too much on nostalgia and remaking.
Yeah, and to get on that nostalgia point, though, I want to point out that I think it was still a decent movie had you not seen the other ones before. Like, there wasn't too much you needed to know other than the background sort of Luke and Han and stuff. But
I think to get the deeper meaning, you had to know who Luke and the dark side is. But just like on like the very base level, you can just watch it.
You would have enjoyment without necessarily nostalgia being the only thing that made you enjoy the film. I'm pretty sure if you had never seen any of them and you watched it, you still would have had like a fun time watching it, right?
Yeah, and that's why it's got rave reviews. Even though like there's lots of Star Wars fans, there's lots of people that maybe they don't dislike the movie, but they're not necessarily fans. But they're like, that's pretty good. So I think it's not just about bringing back the story of Star Wars. It's bringing back like the spirit of Star Wars. Like, this is what a Star Wars movie feels like. When you think of A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, you get a certain feeling. Yeah. And this had that same feeling, even though it was in many ways very derivative. But you could also say that's like sort of like repeating through generations. The same stuff happens.
Yeah. One thing I liked about this film a lot too was that they had a lot of that sort of, outside of the story world building that they had, like the Rathars they mentioned, and it's like, oh, what are these things? But they you could tell there's a huge history behind them. A lot of things to know about these aliens, and there's some huge story behind them. But
just kind of thrown out there.
Yeah, and Finn mentions, oh, you never heard of the slaughter of blah blah blah, and it's like, oh, okay, so there's this event that we don't know about, but that's like such good fodder for the EU to use, right? Because the people who make the EU love to use any sort of small thing they can get to write a whole extra write a whole story upon.
Yeah, so much. There's so much that is unsaid in this film. Like, even like Jakku, it's like it's never explained why all these ships are crashed on.
Well, they say there's the Battle of Jakku, but that's it. They don't explain any of it.
We know from like Battlefront and things like that there was this big battle and all these ships went down. But like, if you didn't know that, it would just be this world with all these like, junk ships.
Yeah.
And what the hell is that about? It's just there's so much like just little details like that that's left unsaid, like the Rathars.
Yeah.
What was Han Solo doing with the Rathars? Where was he bringing them? Where did he get them from?
Yeah,
what are they?
He was like smuggling them. I think the way that I thought about it was he was smuggling them kind of like some sort of underground ivory trade that's really illegal,
exactly.
And that's why he's trying to smuggle them between whatever.
You can kind of piece it together, but it's not spelled out. It's just kind of there, and it's like make of this what you will.
Yeah, exactly, and that's something that I really like too. It's like a lot of show don't tell. You just have to figure it out, kind of imagine it in your mind, and that's kind of what makes Star Wars great too. Is that you always have this sort of imagination constantly going, and you kind of create the universe yourself, right, as you watch it.
Well, that's like in A New Hope, Obi-Wan's like, oh yeah, I was in the Clone Wars with your father, and it's like, what the hell's the Clone Wars?
Yeah.
Why were you, like, who was the father? Why were you in there? Like, what? Like, there's so much that is just like left to your imagination.
Yeah. And on that note, another thing is they don't really mention anything with the prequels other than the clones at one point, and you have Hux kind of.
At one point, he says like, "No, my men are better than clones. Let's keep using my men. I can train them better or whatever."
Yeah.
So that's the only. Which right there's a whole backstory there where there's an internal debate about should we switch back to clones or should we keep bringing in recruits?
Yeah.
Which one is better? And like it's just like from one throwaway line.
And it's cool to note that they're still using clones at that point, even though they're trying to get away from them. But that means that like they've been using them for the last 50 years since the Attack of the Clones came out, right? They've been using them for a long time.
And other details I remember when Finn comes back from the massacre on Jakku, and Captain Phasma, she says something like, "I'm gonna check your gun to have like your shot count."
Yeah.
Just little things like that because it's not like it doesn't use ammunition.
Yeah, it's like a sci-fi thing where they can see how many times he's shot or
something.
So
they monitor how many shots per minute that the stormtroopers are making. Just like a little detail like that is like just to show like how like fascist that they are.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say too, my other small complaint about the movie, and again, maybe not like it's a terrible complaint. It's just I wish it was a bit longer, and I mean in that sense, I wish there were some parts that were drawn out a little bit more. Like Finn's departure was really soon. I know that Captain Phasma scene that we just mentioned was kind of like, okay, well, she's gonna check my gun, and she's gonna find out. You know, he's like getting kind of scared and everything.
That he didn't fire a shot in the battle.
Yeah, and he's gonna probably get killed for it or something. But he still just leaves right then, and it's just like really quick. And then also like
the pacing was too fast. I guess at the end of the day, that's the argument. We both feel that way. It was a little too quick. Like even like Star Destroyer base, it's like, okay, we're gonna go attack Star Destroyer. Okay, light speed, here we go.
Boom, we're there.
And the X-wings are blowing shit up, and it's like, okay, like that just happened.
Yeah, there's like no travel times for this scene, and who knows? Maybe there's some scenes that were cut out. Maybe there's a director's cut that might have a few extra scenes in it.
I think Abrams got to make the movie he wanted to make.
Yeah,
I think one of my main criticisms is that Starkiller Base has no lead up. It just kind of appears, and then like, oh yeah, there's Starkiller Base, and then they blow it up, and that's it.
Yeah.
There you go. It just kind of appears and goes away.
Yeah.
And there was one. I remember there was a shot when Starkiller Base is first activated. And it blows up a couple planets, and you see, like, a city planet.
Yeah.
Is that the Republic?
That's supposed to be the Republic, but I don't know if that's like...
Because they mentioned in the crawl that there is a Republic.
I think that's the Republic, but I don't know if it's, like, all of it. Like, I can't... Maybe that was, like, a big part of it. I don't know if that's all the Republic.
Like, is that Coruscant, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed like it was supposed to be...
It's just like a shot or two.
Yeah. They don't really give you enough to tell you about whether or not it is.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, so the Republic exists. Because they make mention of it. There is a Republic.
Yeah.
And then this is kind of on the fringes. So the Resistance is kind of like the anti-terrorist faction of the Republic.
Yeah.
And the New Order is kind of like I don't know, like ISIS or some sort of terrorist cell. That's like kind of pushing back.
They're very militant, though, so...
Yeah, I don't know. That's like not really spelled out. Like, how big is the First Order?
Yeah. I mean, they're big enough that they have a huge planet... death weapon with thousands of
but yet at the same time there is the Republic, so like what's up with that? Like how established is it? Is it like struggling? Is it well established? I don't know. That's what I mean. Like there's all this backstory.
Sort of like extra questions that we still have that might be find out in the next one.
Probably in the expanded universe.
Yeah. I really liked sort of a lot of I liked a lot of the new characters that we saw. One of the dynamics that I really liked was between Hux and Kylo Ren sort of fighting for Snoke's favor, and they're like,
jockeying for position, And
Hux was like, saying, "Oh, my recruits they're going to be better than the stormtroopers," and he's sort of like trying to fight the like military front be part of the military front for the First Order. As where Kylo Ren's like, "Oh, I can get you whatever you want. I've got the Force."
Using the Force, and then he fails, and it makes him look bad, right? Because he couldn't extract it from Rey. So I guess that leads into Snoke. So let's talk about Snoke. Snoke really surprised me, actually. We didn't know anything.
Yeah, first of all, Andy Serkis is a dirty, rotten liar because he said he wasn't playing a mocap character, and he definitely was.
Yes, that definitely was not Andy Serkis in the flesh.
So...
In fact, I would say that was actually one of the instances where the CG was a little bit more obviously CG, like you could kind of tell, but whatever, it worked.
Yeah, I mean, but it's supposed to be CG even in universe, right? Because it's a big projection
hologram,
of him being 20 feet tall or something crazy.
One thing I noticed is that the hologram technology has upgraded. Like, there's no longer the television scan lines. It's actually just like a 3D image.
Except on the Millennium Falcon, they still had that sort of old one because
because
it's an old sort of ship still, right? That piece of junk. It's like it's still got this old hologram technology, which is a really cool throwback, I think.
Yeah, Rey's like, "We'll take this ship." He's like, "What about this one?" He's like, "No, that's junk." And then the good ship explodes. They're like, "Let's go to the junk."
So Snoke is a really interesting character and very mysterious to say the least, because they haven't really told us anything about him.
Yeah, like where does he come from? What's his background?
Yeah, he seems to
Who is he? What type of a creature is he?
I don't know.
And how did he become the supreme leader of the New Order? I keep calling it the New Order.
Yeah, the First Order.
The First Order.
Not the Japanese band. World Order.
No,
it's World Order.
New Order is also a band from England. They're basically if you don't like the Cure, they're like the other Cure.
So back to Snoke. I kind of have a suspicion because of this projection that he projects himself at 20 feet tall that he's actually going to be a really small alien, like Yoda size, because
2.5 feet tall.
Yeah, to kind of just overcompensate for his small stature or something.
And it seems like he's very strong in the Force, so he's maybe the antithesis to Yoda.
Yeah. and you know,
so like an evil Yoda.
Yeah, and I think like that's gonna kind of lead into, you know, his sort of Wizard of Oz status where he projects himself bigger than
the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, and
the
he's
puppet
gonna be
master.
small,
That's
like
the
puppet
perfect
master.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's like kind of one of the things that he's gonna end up sort of becoming. Maybe not exactly. He could just be a regular sized person. But
well, that's what
should I have?
Was it Han Solo that says that? That's like, oh, Snoke is like manipulating you, and he's like basically gets at like he's pulling the strings and you know all that stuff. But it makes you wonder like how did he learn the dark side? Did he find? Because Luke found the first Jedi temple, which. What is that? Where did that come from? I don't. There's a whole backstory there.
Yeah.
Did he find a Sith temple? Was he taught by some secret Sith that had survived all along in secret and you never knew about?
If he even is a Sith, we don't know because they don't. He seems to be like manipulating Kylo Ren somehow, but I don't know if that necessarily implies that he could use the Force or if he's just like.
Well, I think it's implied that he's strong on the dark side.
Maybe, but he could just be like a smooth talker. Again, to go back to this sort of Wizard of Oz thing, is he just like behind the curtains, manipulative, but not actually like he could even say that he's part of like the Sith Order, but he's not even part of it.
I guess how would Kylo Ren know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of questions that are left for him, and that's definitely something that was left for the next film to explore because they kind of don't really get too much into him at all.
No.
A lot of this stuff was just us, you know.
Well, that's the whole thing with the first movie. It's just an introduction of all these elements, and it's like, what is this? What is this? What is this? And then the following material will sort of fill in the gaps.
Yeah. So that's definitely one of the big open-ended questions for the next film to kind of explain a bit. And also, like, what's Luke's relationship with him at all? Because he doesn't even seem to, like, I don't know. Was he around when Luke was around? Does Luke know
Does
about
Luke
him?
even know he exists?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's a good segue into, you want to talk about Luke and Kylo Ren and Han?
Yeah.
And that whole sort of, like, cluster that happened?
Yeah. So from the flashback thing that we see from Rey, it sort of seems to be implied that Luke had started a school of Jedi.
Well, that's what Han says.
Yeah, and at that school, at some point, Kylo Ren and these Knights of Ren or whatever people that were around him slaughtered all of his pupils
because you see all these dead bodies.
Yeah, and he's there like touching R2, like giving him the map, and it seems like he's like, well, you know, I failed. My school was
I screwed everything up. One of my students went bad, and he recruited all these other people.
And his nephew, no less, right? Like,
and not only that, like his best friend's son. So not only did he fail to bring back the Jedi, he like basically threw away the life of his best friend's son.
Yeah,
and like also and he was like so like couldn't look Han Solo in the eye ever again. So he just like left.
Yeah, it seemed like that was the schism that broke apart the original cast, like that moment where.
And when that happened, Han and Leia's relationship sort of crumbled.
Yeah, Han kind of left the
resistance or whatever it was.
Yeah, and he went off and just became a smuggler again, and like, you know, Leia kind of got married to her work and just became like really strong sort of general, and then like Luke just went off to his first Jedi temple to sort of, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, which actually in a really dark way, like oftentimes in families, like if there's a death of a child that like breaks apart the marriage because they just can't deal with it very well, which is actually very dark, like subject matter, especially like Luke becoming Obi-Wan, an Obi-Wan like character, but then like literally becoming like Obi-Wan, the good and the bad, like because Obi-Wan failed Anakin, right?
Yeah, and then went off and like hit himself to you know, hide, I guess, away from what he'd done, but also other things too. But yeah, and it seems like Luke kind of did that too, right? He's left after this. So the other thing too is like in that sort of flashback, it seems like Kylo Ren and those people were near Luke at the time when he found out. I think. You know what? Now that I think about it, I don't know. Maybe Kylo Ren and them killed them all and had left by that point, stole maybe Vader's mask from Luke, because at some point he gets it.
Well, that would explain, because we were always wondering how does Kylo Ren have Vader's mask? And it's like, okay, if he was a student of Luke,
and he formed a coup or something, and attacked them.
Maybe he stole it, and now is like idolizing it.
Yeah, and like. The thing too is, I don't know, was Luke there when that happened, or was he off-world or something?
Did he go somewhere and came back and his Jedi Academy is like destroyed?
Or were those two sort of events at the exact same time, and Luke was actually there with them when they did it? Is he turning around and going to be facing them, and what happened then? Did he like kill the rest of the Knights of Ren? Because we don't see them. We just know Kylo Ren is there. The rest of those guys are all gone.
That would be equally traumatic if Luke was forced to kill like all of his students, and Kylo Ren was the only one that survived.
And maybe he spared him because he's his nephew, right? And he couldn't force himself to kill him. He just didn't feel like he was, you know, he could do something like that.
But now maybe that's arguably regrettable because Kylo Ren is now like the sort of, you know, the strong arm of the First Order.
Yeah. So that's really cool, like, material that we don't know anything about now. All these questions.
It's just touched upon.
Yeah.
It's just touched upon. There's just a few references to it, but there's really juicy subject matter.
Yeah. And then to get back into Kylo Ren, the whole, story with him and Han, we kind of came back to this sort of father and son thing again, but this time it was like the father was trying to convert the son from the dark side as opposed to the opposite way. It mirrored.
And also it sounded like the son was had gone dark but was being tempted by the light side.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I think he says something to that effect. I'm being tempted by the light side or whatever.
Yeah.
And also, I think, who was he talking to? Was it Snoke? Where he says, like, like my old identity, I killed that person. He no longer exists.
Yeah, and that's very similar to when Ben Kenobi says, I killed your father. He's dead now.
Yeah.
Not that he killed him, sorry. That Darth Vader killed your father. He's dead now, right? Like, that same sort of identity is now dead and not the same person.
Yeah, it's a way of, like, dehumanizing the person and, like, rebuilding a new identity on the ashes of the old one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I got chills when Han called him Ben there and, like, called out to him.
When he said that, that for me was the climax of the film where he goes, Ben, and Kylo Ren turns around. I was like, oh my god! As soon as he
Han's gonna die.
As soon as he approached them, I turned to you. I go, Patrick, I think this is it.
Yeah.
Because we both called it. Like we kind of predicted that Han Solo would die.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing we didn't see coming was that Kylo Ren was Han Solo's son.
Yeah, and they would kill him there, like at the end. It's sort of this really weird moment that we're not really quite sure sort of what happened there, where he takes the. Well, I mean, I guess seems to be implied that he's like. Here, you have to do it. He gives like the lightsaber to Han, implying that he wants him to kill him because he can't stop being like in this dark side. And when Han grabs it, like, thanks for making this easy for me, because now he kind of like the rage that his father would actually try to kill him kind of got him back to the dark side, and he ends up killing Han over it.
Yeah, well, I think my interpretation was like he wants to kill his father because that's what's expected of him, but he can't bring himself to do it, so he needs a little bit of help. So that's why he kind of tricks Han. Like Han thinks he's meaning something else, so he kind of tricks Han into like making him kill himself.
Yeah, but that was like one of the great like
that was
chills. That scene, I was like, whoa,
that whole scene, that was for sure the climax. Like the X-wing battle was kind of boring, to be honest. Just like, okay, they're flying around and shooting stuff.
Yeah,
but what's going on inside and the scene with Rey and Kylo Ren following? That's the climax. It's the emotional climax. Which is like, it's not reliant on action or special effects. It's like the characters and the drama.
Yeah.
And I think that's what sets this movie apart. So anyway, that scene was definitely like, the X-Wing battle wasn't really all that interesting. I mean, it was cool to see, but it's like, the climax of the movie was the emotional climax. That the whole part with Han and Kylo Ren, like I lost it at that part. And the following
scene with Finn fighting him, and then like first of all I called that Finn was gonna use lightsaber, but it was like a
and he got his ass kicked.
Yeah, it was a throwaway. Like it was just like to kind of throw us off from Rey actually being the one to be able to use it and everything. But that scene was really cool. That whole fight, like I don't know. We had said before that we had heard there was some weight to it. There was definitely sounded like there was a lot of weight to these fights because you see them like hammering away and it sounded really loud, like boom, boom. Yeah. They had to like actually like
what's supposed to be in the original films was supposed to be that the lightsabers were like broadswords.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense because it's just a laser beam on the hilt.
Yeah, the hilt that's probably not that heavy, but yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
And so I guess as a final thing, who's Rey? Like. Is she no one or is she someone?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's left open right now.
Is she Luke's daughter? Is she Kylo Ren's twin? And like one is good and one is bad? And like the final scene after the lightsaber battle, the ground opens up and so there's this chasm and like he's on he's on one side and she's on the other. Which
is definitely like showing sort of the light versus the dark side.
Yeah.
The split of the Force, but I don't know necessarily if it's like her and him being like siblings and that's why. Or
both sides of the same. That which was a very good like symbolic visual storytelling.
Yeah.
But it's like how far do you take that?
Yeah, and the thing though about it is that there's lots of different aspects to who she could be. One thing though is that it's definitely left ambiguous at this point. No one's mentioned anything, and like no one else of the characters seem to really know. For her, it just sort of seems like she's just this outcast.
Well, yeah, it's like
no one's really led anyone to believe that they actually know who she is at this point.
she can like instinctively understand the Falcon.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Anakin was always instinctively good with machines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, like when she touches the lightsaber, she has a flashback into all like the memories of the lightsaber itself.
That's the only thing that seems very sort of like
and Maz is like it's calling to you.
Yeah, it's only that seems to imply that she's very connected to Luke somehow. But at the same time, like it's still very ambiguous. She was just left there as a baby on a planet. Like when could that have happened? You know, it definitely wasn't. I don't. She seems to be around the same age as Kylo Ren, so I doubt it was kind of like Luke. Oh, after I screwed up everyone else, I'll leave this daughter that I have here.
No, it must have been way before then. Because you see her in the flashback, and she's 5 years old, being dropped off at Jakku.
Yeah. So I don't know. You know, to be honest, Anakin's origin came out of nowhere. So if she's just actually some other new character, her origin kind of just came out of nowhere too, and then kind of remained ambiguous. But I'm sure at some point they'll kind of get back into it.
Yeah. Well, you know, the Star Wars saga is the saga of the Skywalker family, and at the very least, you have that with Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
So, like, okay, so that satisfies the minimum requirement.
Yeah.
Right there. And I guess the final thing about Kylo Ren is that a friend was just mentioning this, which is that, like, maybe Kylo Ren is, like, kind of like a sleeper agent?
Yeah.
Where, like, in order to infiltrate the First Order, he had to actually turn bad, like, because he couldn't fake it. He actually had to become bad.
Yeah.
And that's why when he asks Han to kill him, maybe it's like, reminds me of like Snape and Dumbledore, like this sort of like, in secret they were like conspirers in this like elaborate thing.
Yeah, and that would kind of explain why Kylo Ren's very obsessed with Darth Vader, because Darth Vader did the same thing, not as a sleeper agent, but would have been done the same thing, where he goes into the dark side and in the end kind of redeems himself and kills the Emperor.
Well, yeah, well, if
stops the ultimate evil, right?
If he's obsessed with Darth Vader, he was Luke's student.
Yeah.
So like normally, like before we didn't know he was Luke's student. I said like why. Like, he probably thinks Darth Vader died on the Death Star and never was redeemed.
Yeah.
But if he was Luke's pupil,
sure
then Luke would have told him about, like, oh, no, there's hope for everyone, because even Darth Vader was able to turn good. And so he's this ultimate symbol for the incorruptible aspect of humanity.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's why he's obsessed, because he's, like, this symbol of hope in a way. And that's why he has Darth Vader's helmet as well as like a shrine.
Yeah, to kind of remind him that at some point he's still going to have to, you know, redeem himself.
Everyone still has humanity somewhere buried deep in them.
Yeah.
So,
who knows?
Yeah, final food for thought. That's a pretty interesting angle.
Yeah, for sure. A couple other things I want to mention too are, like, I'm not really sure what Snoke has planned for him next. He said come back and complete your training, and that's still really left ambiguous. One thing that I think might sort of come up from this is that, you know, Snoke might still be this small person, right? With this, like, you know, very
puppet master.
Yeah, but also not physical, like, at all. And maybe he might want to use Kylo Ren to sort of, like, you know, this might be a bit of a stretch, but sort of try to take over his body or take him over or something, and like use him as his own like physical
like
sort of
surrogate.
Yeah, surrogate. Which
well,
is like,
there is a precedent in Dark Empire. The spirit of the Emperor creates a clone body, a younger clone body for his like spirit to go in.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like it hasn't been done and done well.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, maybe Snoke is the Emperor too. Also, kind of in this guy, just waiting. I doubt it though. That's gonna be a bit much.
Yeah, it could be. Well, I mean, who knows? It's like it's so. There's so much left to interpretation.
Yeah, and we'll kind of release more episodes after we see the movie a few more times. Kind of do a bit of like a pro and con in depth into some of these theories that we're kind of just throwing out at the moment because it's kind of still just new in our minds and these are just popping up. And our evidence list right now is pretty small, seeing as we've only seen it once, right? Yeah. And then final thing I want to mention too is I really liked a lot of the characters. I like tore it up because I liked all of the new cast. I really liked Poe Dameron, I really liked Finn, and I really liked Rey. I think it's a great way to sort of start up this new Star Wars trilogy because not one of the characters seemed to fall flat on me. I like them all, and I really want to see more Poe because of all of the new characters, he had the least screen time, but was still a really important character.
Left a good impression, yeah.
Yeah, and I like that he was like, I mean, I guess Finn wasn't either, but like neither was Rey, I suppose, because we don't know yet. But he was the one character that was kind of inducted into it being really important in the Resistance, not due to nepotism, because he was just the best pilot
He's just some guy, yeah.
Yeah, but he's the best pilot they had, so that's why he's like a main character, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, Rey, again, she can use the Force very well, and that was implied in this movie, so that kind of makes her a main character just, by that ability. Finn is just, was useful, so it kind of gives them all reason to be really important in the story for the fight. Yeah,
so be sure, I'm sure you all have comments to leave and thoughts and opinions, views on this. So be sure to leave them in the comments section. We look forward to reading them all.
Yeah.
And
the last scene was with Luke staring down. Man, I was getting so emotional just from that one stare. It was so great.
His expression was so like soulful, where he's kind of like world weary, but kind of happy, but kind of sad. I don't know what J.J. Abrams said to him to direct him to have that look, but it was beautiful.
I know, I love that shot. It was so good. And that was Skilling Michael, like we had said before. One of the rumors that we heard was that they started filming there again right away for episode 8. So you can tell
he's training her, So he does accept the lightsaber.
I like how they cut Mark Hamill to get in shape for this movie, and they used him in one shot.
It's just his face. You can just CG onto another body. Okay, anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next episode.